Welcome to Sissygram Stories channel. How are you all? I know you like my voice, and my voice makes you more soft and relax. Hit the like button and subscribe button if you like my voice, and my voice makes you feel more girly by reading this kind of stories. Okay, good. Now let's start this story. My name is Alina, and I'm a 23-year-old gender-fluid male. By choice, I've been working as a full-time, live-in housemaid for almost a year. This might sound unusual, so let me share the story of how it all began. I was born as Alex, the only child of a well-off family. I grew up with every privilege, attending elite private schools and eventually a prestigious university where I studied applied economics. For most of my life, I assumed I was destined to follow in my father's footsteps and someday take over as president and CEO of his real estate company. But life took an unexpected turn. Since I was young, ID felt an inexplicable draw to the idea of being a female domestic servant. I couldn't explain the inclination, but it kept coming back stronger every time I tried to ignore it. Though I'm completely heterosexual and attracted to women, I've always been equally captivated by the clothes they wear, especially the uniforms associated with maids and housekeepers. Seeing a woman in a maid's dress, an apron would transfix me. I couldn't take my eyes off them. My parents were traditional in their roles, but very different personalities. My father, Roger Allen, was strong-willed, opinionated, and used to being in control. He was a big man, slightly overweight, and seemed to genuinely care for my mother, at least from what I could see. My mother, Adele, was petite, very feminine, and intellectual. She always had a book in hand, and spent her time in book clubs and film circles, with little interest in household management. As a result, our home was run by Anna, our Filipino live-in housekeeper, a bright and capable woman in her mid-30s who had worked for us for many years. Anna had come into our lives when I was about 14. I was immediately fascinated by her because she was everything I secretly aspired to be. Though she was educated and had a nursing degree, like many Filipino women, she'd had to migrate to support her family back home. She was divorced and had 2 young children who stayed in the Philippines under her parents' care. Anna's role in our household was elevated due to my mother's lack of interest in running the house. She was responsible for everything: shopping, cooking, cleaning, laundry. Our home was a large 2-story mansion with a big garden, so her workload was intense, but she was well paid and never complained. I admired her immensely, often fantasizing about being in her place. One thing that disappointed me, though, was that Anna wasn't required to wear a maid's uniform. My parents were fairly liberal, and since Anna was technically a housekeeper rather than a maid, she dressed casually in bright, printed cotton duster dresses from the Philippines. She wore large, practical aprons while working, giving her the look of an old-fashioned housewife rather than a traditional maid. Then, one day, everything changed. My father announced that he was leaving us. I was 22, in my final year of university, and I remember that cool spring morning vividly. During breakfast, he simply told us he was moving out. My mother stayed silent, and though I wanted to ask questions, he brushed them off, saying everything had been settled and that my mother would explain the details. Within minutes, he picked up a small suitcase and left. After he was gone, my mother explained, with surprising calm, that my father had been having an affair with his assistant, Emily Simons, and had decided to move in with her. She said it had been written in the cards for a long time, as she and my father were never truly compatible. However, he'd been generous in the separation, leaving her the house and a substantial allowance to cover living expenses, including Anna's salary. He also ensured we'd be financially secure for the foreseeable future. Additionally, my mother had her own private income from her parents, so we were far from destitute. My feelings were mixed. ID never felt entirely at ease with my father. I always sensed I wasn't the right kind of son for him. I took after my mother in appearance, small, slender, with delicate features that led people to call me a pretty boy. Much to my embarrassment, the morning he left, my mother stood up from the table, walked over to me, and gave me a strong hug, a gesture that was rare for her. "Everything will be fine, Alex," she said. "I think the three of us, myself, you, and Anna will feel much more at ease now that your father isn't here to intimidate us. Don't you agree?" I nodded, somewhat surprised, and replied, "Yes, Mother. I think you're right." She smiled, saying she'd prepared herself for this day a long time ago. After my father's departure, our lives gradually changed for the better. My mother seemed happier and more relaxed. She started laughing again, and for the first time, I saw her joking with Anna, who now called her Adele rather than Mrs. Allen. A few days later, during breakfast, my mother looked at me thoughtfully and asked, "Alex, would you like to help Anna with the housework? She could certainly use an extra pair of hands in a house this size. I've noticed you seem a bit restless, and it might give you something to do." I blushed deeply. How could she know about my secret desire? At that moment, Anna chimed in with a smile. "Come on, Alex. We both know you'd enjoy it. I've known you for years, and I can tell you'd love helping around the house." She continued, "And don't worry, your father's not here to judge you anymore. Besides, I found a little stash of clothes at the back of your closet. You could use them if you want to become my assistant." Flustered, I stammered, "What do you mean, hidden clothes? Have you been snooping in my closet?" Anna smiled mischievously. "Not snooping, just tidying up. But don't worry, Alex. I always sensed you had a feminine side. A mother can tell these things," my mother added. "And don't worry, we live in a gender-fluid world. It's nothing to be ashamed of." I looked at the two of them, amazed at how easily they were discussing this. They'd seen right through me deciding to be open, I admitted. "Yes, I've always been fascinated by housework and watching Anna work. There's something calming about it." My mother smiled. "Why don't you let Anna be your tutor? You can be her junior maid and follow her instructions." Could this really be happening? Was I finally going to live out my fantasy? Before I could respond, Anna said, "Why don't you go put on that gray maid's dress and white apron I found in your closet? And those comfortable sneakers, too. Then we'll start your training." Without another word, I went to my room and changed. I returned to the kitchen, where Anna, in her usual duster dress and apron, looked up and beamed. "Look at you! You make a convincing maid even without makeup. You have such a cute waist, and the apron really suits you." Blushing, I replied, "Thank you, Anna. I feel right in these clothes. They give me a sense of purpose." "Well, there are a few more things we need to address," Anna said. "First, you'll need some moderate breast forms to fill out the dress properly. And we need a suitable name. Alex doesn't quite work when you're dressed like this. Do you have a female name you like?" I blushed again, admitting I'd never thought of one. Anna suggested Alina, after a cousin of hers back in the Philippines. I agreed, and from that moment, I was Alina, Anna's junior maid. Anna then began my training, starting with a lesson in the importance of keeping the kitchen spotless. The kitchen comes first. Always make sure it's immaculate before moving on to the rest of the house. "Yes, Anna," I replied, grabbing the antibacterial spray and a cloth to start wiping down the countertops. That marked the beginning of my new, surreal, yet deeply fulfilling life as a maid. As time passed, my role became more formalized. I addressed my mother as Madam or Mrs. Allen, and Anna as Miss Anna. With Anna's guidance, I built a wardrobe of practical maid uniforms, duster dresses, and modest undergarments. I even started wearing breast forms and styling my hair in a simple bob. Soon enough, I was Alina full-time. My mother's social life blossomed, and she began hosting guests from her book club. Dressed in my black maid's dress and white apron, I served drinks and snacks, unnoticed as anything other than Alina the maid. No one knew I was actually Mrs. Allen's son, and I preferred it that way. To conclude this part of my story, I'll add one final detail. Mrs. Allen and Miss Anna have been lovers for some time now. Both have had negative experiences with men and have found comfort in each other. Now, they have the best of both worlds, each other's companionship, and a dedicated, gender-fluid male housemaid to care for their home. For me, being Alina has brought a profound sense of fulfillment. This life, however unexpected, is exactly where I want to be. Okay, so story ends here now. I want you to write in comment section. What will you do if you were in that character, and what should be the next part of this story? Don't forget to subscribe this channel for daily updates of Sissygram stories. I will get back to you with new story content soon. Take care.